all eyes also on the stock market this morning as the latest escalation in the trade war started by Donald Trump has put markets into a free fall.
Well, CP24's Courtney Heels joins us live downtown this morning with more on what we're seeing and what's to come later this morning when the markets open. Courtney.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, that's the big question this morning, guys, but we know things are not looking good. The markets have been hit very, very hard by the announcement from U.S. President Donald Trump announcing that 10% tariff on most global imports on Tuesday. We're seeing investors react to that because there's a lot of uncertainty. We know investors don't like that. This morning on the global markets, we're starting to see shares are sliding. Let's break down some of the numbers and what we're seeing so far. I want to bring in BNN Bloomberg's Paul Bagnell. Good morning, Paul. Let's start with what we're seeing on the global markets already. What are you seeing?
Well, we are certainly, Courtney, not seeing any kind of positive bounce back from yesterday. Yesterday, markets were absolutely crushed by that announcement. For instance, the tech stocks, as measured by the NASDAQ Composite Index, fell by 6% yesterday. It's a huge move down. The broadly based S&P 500 in the U.S. had its biggest daily decline since 2020, so its biggest drop in about 5 years. And here in Toronto, the S&P TSX Composite Index was down about 4%. And if investors were hoping to get a positive bounce today, it has not materialized. The U.S. futures contracts are down substantially, about 2% apiece. That's the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ 100. The European markets are down substantially, and Asian markets have closed, and they finished down substantially as well. What investors are worried about is a global trade war that will slow down global economic growth, make it much, much more difficult for companies to boost their profits. And when companies show lackluster profit growth, share prices decline. And that's what the market is factoring in right now.
Yeah, and speaking of trade war, we're seeing countries respond to the tariff announcement from the White House earlier this week. China, for example, announcing this morning they're looking at a pretty significant reciprocal tariff. What can you tell us about that? Yeah,
so China was at the top of the list of the U.S. reciprocal tariffs yesterday at 34%. So Donald Trump's tariffs put a 34% tariff levy on all Chinese goods being shipped into the United States. As I think markets expected, China has responded with an identical tariff on U.S. goods being shipped into China of 34%, and has also put export controls on so-called rare earths. Rare earths are specialized minerals that are used in the manufacture of sophisticated electronics, and a lot of them come from beneath the earth in China. And this is exactly, Courtney, what many people predicted and what markets have feared. And that is not only are damaging U.S. tariffs imposed on trading partners, but there is a response from other countries like Canada, like China. These could be the early steps in a trade war where everybody raises tariffs. The cost of everything goes up as a result.
Yeah, and of course, that's the concern for everyday Canadians, and I'm sure Americans too, right? And we also know there was the real concern of layoffs, and already we're seeing the impact. We know yesterday Stellantis announced temporary layoffs on both sides of the border.
Yeah, so hopefully we don't see more of this, but, you know, I think if this situation persists, unfortunately, we likely will. As you know, and as we know, the U.S. has put a 25% tariff on Canadian vehicles shipped into the U.S. with some of the parts not being covered by the CUSMA free trade deal. Regardless of the details, Stellantis feels it needs to take a close look at this situation. Stellantis is the company that makes Chrysler and Fiat vehicles. It has a plant in Windsor, Ontario. It's idled that plant for at least 2 weeks, and some 6,000 unionized workers are on temporary layoff. We certainly hope that it's only a temporary layoff, but the auto sector is a major sector of the Canadian economy and the U.S. economy. We often hear how interconnected it is, how a vehicle will travel across the border several times before it's complete. So certainly more job losses or layoffs are possible in this sector.
Yeah, it's so challenging. I mean, even just last week, Paul, I was out at the jam plant in Oshawa talking to workers there, and you know they were so nervous at that time. They didn't know what this would look like. And here we are already talking about layoffs, not there, but certainly it's hitting that sector so very hard. Paul Bagnell with BNN Bloomberg joining us live. Thanks, Paul. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you as we wait the markets to open.
Thanks a lot, Courtney.